Well, hi guys. I'm shooting from my mother's house in Florida because I came down to visit her for a week on this one. And I also want to show you something. I don't know how well you can see it, but that's a peace sign. It's a John Barbados shirt. I love his stuff, or their stuff. Anyway, but it's a peace sign which is relevant for the subject of this video, which is marriage and love. And not in the way that you might be expecting somebody to talk about love and marriage. Love is a given. Typically, you don't get married unless at some point you were in love with the person. And you might have doubts, you might have cold feet before you're about to go to the altar and things, but for the most part, there was love there at some point. And let's assume that love is intact, and when you get married, you're both madly in love. That's the framework out of which I'm kind of operating here and going to develop things, because love isn't enough. And this is for those of you who may be thinking about getting married, or even if you are married and wondering, why is life going the way it's going with my husband or wife, with my spouse? And, it feels great to be in love. There's so much hope for a new future. But, Don Henley, there was a song he came out with a long time ago titled "The End of Innocence." And there was a line or two in it that says, let's see, I wrote it down. He says, when happily ever fails as a result of being poisoned by these fairy tales. And the script that we're handed that, marriage is all about love and feeling great all the time. It's really not. Like, love is the inducement to getting married. But then, there's a lot more to marriage than just feeling good. That's the platform off of which you operate. So if you're thinking of getting married, just consider what I'm going to tell you when you're going to get married, or if you're married and sort of confused about why things aren't going the way you thought. Maybe this will put a few things into perspective so you can capture a sense of peace, which is why I have this is a peace sign on my shirt. Love isn't enough. It's the platform on which we build a life with someone else. If you didn't love the person, you wouldn't go down this journey with the person. If you didn't have real strong feelings toward that person, you'd keep them as a friend or an acquaintance, but you wouldn't go any further than that. So when you've fallen in love, that's just the start. Don't let those early feelings fool you into thinking that you've definitely found the right one. Because those feelings, they're real, but they're not necessarily the product of thinking things through about what makes for a compatible mate. So I encourage anybody who's thinking about getting married to take your time, because marriage is work. It does involve work. Anybody who's been married or who is married understands that part of it. Love is the undercurrent, but after a while, I don't want to say you take the love for granted. We probably do, but it's just the platform on which you start to build other things in life. And those things, like the actual building that you're making, that becomes your focus. And there are certain things to think about before you get married, or even while you're married now, if you're trying to recapture a love that you may have had, or that you're still in love but are wondering, why aren't we as connected as we could be? These certain things that I'll share with you are things to consider that can help get you back on track. A career is very important. And let's say it's a two-income household. In America, that's very common, but in one sense, it doesn't matter. But careers, if both of you work, it's very important that the other person is happy in his or her work. And, you don't necessarily think about that, but if you're, when you get married and you're living together, the other, your husband or wife is coming home and they may or may not be happy. And you've just come home from work, and maybe you love your job, maybe you don't, but there's sort of got to be a measure of support there. And over time, that can get kind of difficult, because now you're dealing with the real aspects of being in a relationship, a marriage with somebody. And that's just one of the things that is relevant. So, like disposable income is another one. Many, many marriages involve some element of fighting or arguing over money. Like, how are we going to pay our bills? Or even if there is money, how much do we want to save? How much do we want to spend? But having disposable income is a very comforting thing in a relationship. And that's just something to think about. It's not a deal breaker necessarily for a marriage, but money is important. We know that. Money is important. You have to pay your electricity, you have to eat, you have to have clothing, you'd like to go on a vacation, you'd like to do nice things for your kids, put them in dance lessons, put them in hockey, horseback riding, whatever you might be doing, but it costs money to buy them baseball mitts and things. And love, you can't go into a sporting goods store and tell the cashier, oh, I'm in love with my husband, I really would like this baseball mitt. What the cashier needs is money. And so this is the type of thing that you're going to be looking at much more closely and more frequently when you're married. So, how you're going to raise your children is a biggie. Because, presumably if you're engaged to be married now or thinking about getting engaged, you're thinking about having children, but you're not necessarily thinking about, because this is generally learned by experience, how you're going to raise them. And there's so many decisions to be made, whether you're going to go to church, whether you're going to go to temple, whether you're not going to do either, different aspects. Where do you want to live? Let's say you've met somebody who's a transplant from somewhere else, and maybe they kind of want to go back home, or maybe they don't, and you want to go back to where you grew up, or maybe one of you would like to live near the water and the other likes mountains, or the plains of Nebraska or somewhere, wherever you might want to live. These things are relevant, and those become the issues. Love is rarely an issue in a marriage. This is just something I've come to understand and experience. Marriages don't break up for lack of love. They typically break up due to lack of communication or lack of connectedness with one another. Because the connectedness you were able to enjoy when you were first dating and engaged and first married, before you had children, before you were bought the house, and before you had financial pressures, you were just able to focus on each other's needs. And you go to dinner whenever you wanted or whatever. But then the pressures start to build. And that's the building that I'm talking about when you're building a life. Love just sort of invites you in to build that building. But then you both want to build that building and typically have unique ideas, different ideas, and that's where you've got to communicate. Here's another one. Do you like to exercise? Does your spouse like to exercise? Are you inclined to let yourself get out of shape? Is your spouse inclined to let him or herself get out of shape? These things, you start to notice them. Oh, you've put on 15 or 20 pounds all of a sudden, or your wife has, your husband has. That impacts you could say rightly or wrongly. I'm just saying on a practical, real level, you notice it when you're with somebody and they've gained a lot of weight, for instance. On the other hand, you might have somebody who's an exercise nut or who really likes to exercise a lot. And that can be a problem too, because it could be overkill to where, if you're the exercise nut, you might not be spending enough time with your spouse or eventually your kids. But tolerance is very important to find the balance where, I have a friend, she still runs marathons. She's always loved to run, but, she gets up at 4:30 in the morning and typically runs at least 10 miles each day. And that's dedication. Now, let's say you're married to her or someone like her, but you're not that much into exercising, that could make you feel insecure that, holy smokes, she's in shape and I'm not. It could be a motivation for you to get in shape, but let's say you have to work 10 hours a day. And so I'm pointing out that these are just some of the practical difficulties, the real life issues that you'll face when you get married. And love will rarely be the question or in doubt. You'll typically love that person, but it's the building that you're going to start looking at. you know, the reason marriages hurt so much when they end, and I know because I've gone through a divorce, isn't because you don't love the other person. It's because living with that person and the way either you relate to your spouse or your spouse relates to you, or typically both, becomes a problem. And, you know, divorce hurts. Not because you can't wait to get away from that person. Some people can't, because some people do marry a spouse who just goes wrong, or they cheat, or whatever they do. But in a relationship where you just become disconnected from one another, or the other one becomes disenchanted with you, or you become disenchanted with the other, it isn't because in your heart you stop loving them. You'll pretty much always love the other one. This is just what I've learned in speaking with people. You pretty much always love the one that you married, even if you get divorced. But you'll cite reasons why the marriage didn't work out for you, or why you didn't like it anymore, or why they left you. And it typically, very rarely, you'll hear someone say, well, I just didn't love them anymore. You'll hear them say, I didn't like them, perhaps. So keep that in mind. You know, there's more to love in a marriage. Like, believing in your spouse is a big one. Believing in another person is a big one. Understanding who they are, and being articulate enough and aware enough to articulate what you love and like about that person, and why you believe in your spouse, that goes a long way, because it shows that you understand them. You know, just saying I love you as you're walking out the door, that's a nice thing. Or saying I love you when you hang up on the phone, that's nice. But in day-to-day living, it does take effort to be consistent in your support and belief in your spouse, and identifying the things you're thankful for, and identifying the things that you see that they're good at, and just communicating. And that is a big one. The things that go unsaid, I mean, some psychologists and sociologists theorize, and I probably agree with this, that what goes unsaid in a relationship does more damage than what is actually said. Because you might get angry, and say something that's mean, or you wish you hadn't said, but you can apologize for that, and you can make up for it, generally speaking. But if you're somebody who is very quiet, that produces fear in your spouse, because they don't know what you're thinking. And so communication is vitally important to a marriage. You know, in supporting your spouse, let's say for men, at some point your wife's going to go through menopause. It's just biological, it happens. And you might, if you're 30 years old and you've been married a couple of years, or if you're going to be getting married, just keep in mind that, physiologically, I think life is a lot more difficult on women than it is on men. So if you're a guy, kind of prepare yourself mentally for times when she might be struggling or challenging. I think that's part of your duty, when you know that something is coming down the pike, to prepare for it. So, thinking about things ahead of time will also help you when these difficult and challenging situations arise. And letting the other one know that you're there for them, that you support them, that you believe in them, and that you're encouraging to them. We men, we lose our hair. Women don't lose your hair, not nearly the way we do. And so for women, if that's something, as your husband starts to lose his hair, it'd be okay. Prepare yourself for it now, because it's probably going to happen. Not always, but whatever the things are that you can anticipate preparing yourself for, so that you're encouraging to that person, and you communicate your encouragement. This goes a long way. But, in a marriage, we tend to, not always, depends on how laid back you are, but it's not uncommon for one or both to try to convert the other one to your way of doing things, or your way of seeing things. And it's okay to try to get on the same page, but there's really, like, in a marriage, you're blending an individual's life with another individual's life, and you're bringing them together, but they don't come fully together like that. It's sort of like you've got your individuality here, and then there's what you contribute to the union, and that you're part of a marriage. So you're going to retain your identity, and that's where a balance needs to be struck, and encouragement. If you're not a runner, but your spouse is a runner, they like to run, well, encourage them to run. Don't let it intimidate you. Just say, okay, sweetheart, go ahead and run. That's the space where you feel comfortable. Or if you like to play tennis or basketball, or whatever, just encourage the other one. As long as it isn't taking necessary time away, say, from the family or what have you. You'll figure that out. But tolerance is huge in a marriage. And this is where I say love isn't enough. Love isn't going to get you through, your whole life. Tolerance is a big one, okay? Because you're going to bug each other at times. And intolerance is like a wet blanket on the fire of a relationship. Impatience is as well. Bossiness is as well. Insisting that your way is always right, that will damage a relationship. So accept things that are not ideal in the other one. We're all, I've said this in other videos, and I say this with people with whom I speak, but we're all basket cases. We've all got issues in life. And those are going to show up in a marriage. Those are going to show up the closer you get to somebody. Typically, the more often you're going to hurt them, but the more often you're going to bug them just because you're so close to them. And, get comfortable with the idea of having a certain measure of chaos, of discomfort. Maybe that's better, but it's true. Chaos, especially when you have children. But in discomfort, there's a certain measure of discomfort that just waking up in the morning produces. But when you're in a relationship, the hopes and dreams that you have are spectacular. They give so much to you, to each person. So don't necessarily take that for granted. Be aware that the hopes and dreams that you have with that other person, you have those because of that other person making a commitment to you in life. So be tolerant. But before you get married, be aware that you're going to have to grow into being tolerant. If you know now that you're an intolerant person, prepare yourself to become tolerant however you can. And I could spend 50 hours in this video on that, but I'm not. I'm just touching on certain things to prepare you. But being inflexible is a sure way of becoming unhappy. Guaranteed being inflexible. Even if the other person is super laid back, it's not going to work for them. And it certainly won't work for you, because inflexibility is a recipe for your own personal unhappiness. And that will absolutely make other people unhappy as well. Your spouse will grow unhappy and disillusioned, disenchanted with the relationship if you are intractable or just inflexible. So I guess what I'll say here in conclusion, just because I wanted to give you some things to think about, is that love isn't enough. Don't think that because you're in love, oh my God, life is going to be great. We're the only ones who've ever felt this way. It is a great feeling being in love and that deep passion that you've got. But, and enjoy that, without a doubt. Enjoy that. But in the thinking part of you, be aware that you're going to have to make some sacrifices to be in a marriage, and it's work. But it's well worth it when done well. I know people who are happily married, and I'm thinking of one person, one couple in particular right now, and I just love seeing how much she loves being with her husband and how much he loves being with her. And they've got 3 kids that are out of college already. And it's they've had their challenges, as everybody does, but they just love the time they get to spend with each other. So you can do it. And but keep in mind that love is just the start, and tolerance might actually get to you a place of peace. So there you go. Have a great day, guys.